baby comes, it's like throwing a hand bomb in the middle of your marriage. It amplifies a lot of underlying things that are potentially not spoken about. How do we navigate that as a couple? This is a new adventure, and you will become different people. You will see different sides to one another, and your relationship will change. Inevitably, your sex life changes after having a child. That especially the mum is thinking of in the first few months. Making the relationship a safe space. The stress of the baby crying, do you spend a little, 10 minutes spooning in bed before you start your day? That's something that co-regulates the nervous system, that touch, that hugging. All of the conflict styles I can definitely relate to in terms of intense stress.
Me too.
Yeah.
Please subscribe to Unii's channel for more exciting podcasts. Hello and welcome to the Unii podcast with me, your host, Dr. Saranya. Today we are joined by Natalie Mossayebi, a professional relationship coach and our expert for the Unii love, sex and parenting journey. Let's take a look at Unii's relationship journey.
Having a baby changes everything. And yes, absolutely, it's challenging. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed by your newfound parenthood and worried about how it's affecting your relationship, you are not alone. But I'm here to tell you, your relationship is not doomed. And despite the sleepless nights and constant exhaustion, you can and will find each other again. While for some couples, relationship satisfaction may soar after having a baby, research shows that for 2/3 of couples, relationship satisfaction takes a significant dip in the first 3 years after having a baby. By the end of this journey, you will not only be fully equipped to navigate the inevitable challenges that come your way, but you'll find that your relationship becomes stronger, deeper, and more connected and satisfying than before.
Driven by a strong desire to understand the nature of relationships, Natalie has studied the teachings of masterful relationship coaches, therapists, and philosophers, as well as other schools of wisdom such as attachment theory, non-violent communication, and mindfulness. It is her desire to leave clients feeling freer, more secure, with a deep knowing that they have all the resources they need within themselves to help them create truly thriving relationships. As an expectant mother myself, I learned so much from Natalie's uni journey, particularly about something I think a lot of mums-to-be worry about, how my relationship with my partner may be impacted by our new arrival. I have lots of questions and I'm keen to know more about her as well as her expertise. So, let's get started. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello, Dr. Saranya. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Lovely to see you. Now, Natalie, I really enjoyed your uni journey with us, especially because as an expectant mother, I felt that it answered some of those unanswered or unthought about questions about your relationships. We focus on our experiences with the baby after the delivery, but I think we neglect sometimes that the relationship is also really important. Now, with these journeys, I know many of our experts have learnt a lot more about their fields, and I just wondered, is there anything in particular that you learnt from doing this journey with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point that you've made as well. It can be very easy to forget that couple connection. And I love researching anything to do with the relationship. So when I was creating the uni journey that was focused specifically on relationships, it was amazing to discover lots of new people in the field who I'd heard of, but I hadn't really researched the work of, like John Gottmann, for example, which I write a lot about in the uni journeys. I'd heard about, but it wasn't until I was really reading or had the opportunity and the time to really research his work, which I found really transformational, like how to actually communicate and remove criticism and blame from communication, which I'll talk a bit more about later. So that was really powerful. And also Esther Perel's work, really someone that I really hold high in the relationship field and I'm really influenced by. So yeah, having an opportunity to really, really delve deeply into her work. And she talks a lot more about the kind of sex after babies thing, again, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So yeah, all in all, it was really amazing to just know more about that subject because it's so fascinating.
And it's also lovely for us and the listeners to hear that, you were able to also expand on your own expertise. That's great. So as a doctor myself, I spend a lot of time sharing stories with my friends and family and other doctors about our day-to-day lives. Can you tell me a bit about what your day-to-day life involves and at what point perhaps a woman might contact you as a relationship coach?
So I'd say that I work with two different type of clients. So there's a woman that is like completely done with like finding people or being in a relationship with someone that's not right for them. They're just like, they've had a string of relationships and they're like, right, I am really ready to meet that person, like my wingman or wingwoman. And so I'm there to really support a woman with like navigating that process and like understanding the patterns that she's been experiencing in all of her relationships and so really supporting her with getting ready to meet that person and to work with some of the deep stuff that's there and like almost preventing that from happening. And then I work with women in relationship, so dealing with and supporting women with things that are just coming up in relationships, so triggers and patterns or like relationship frustrations or communication.
And how would you suggest a listener who is interested in your work can encourage a partner who is maybe less keen that he or she could benefit?
So the partner is like less keen on mending the relationship or less keen on like working on the relationship. Is that what you mean?
I think it's both of those things.
So it is classic for the woman to be more into the relational stuff than the man. And I think quite often I do hear this like pressure that men feel to like be totally on board with what the woman is suggesting. And I get the frustration on both parts. So it's really like, and I'm going to probably sound like a scratch record throughout this interview because I'm going to keep coming back to the main, like the important aspect, which is what does the relationship need? It's not about what I need. It's not about what you need. It's about what does the relationship need? With that in mind, it's like what capacity does the partner who's not really into that work have for doing that work and like kind of meeting in the middle there, because you kind of both want to say yes to an element of it. And there's also a lot of stuff that people can do on their own. There's a lot of stuff, if, there's an unwilling partner, there's a lot of stuff that people can do on their own, which doesn't involve their partner, and a way of like trickling in the information and being curious and in the invitation of like inviting their partner into a certain conversation or a certain exercise that they've learned. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be you are coming to this workshop with me or reading this book with me or, you suck. It's not so black and white like that. There can be, so I guess going back to the question, my advice is being really, being curious about what the unwilling partner is actually ready for.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And perhaps it's a bit more of a process rather than a black or white.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So from my understanding, work with a relationship coach is more of a process rather than fixing a problem in 1 or 2 appointments. How do you define success in your work?
So what I work the most with in women is this, is women that tend to self-abandon in relationships and perhaps give their power away and contort themselves to be what they think their partner wants them to be. So they're not really being themselves. They're being this version of themselves that they think that their partner is going to enjoy more. How I know that someone is really like getting something from my coaching and being successful with the tools that I'm teaching them is when they are listening to themselves and when they are truly being who they are and allowing their partner to really see them as they are, and also relationally being able to express their vulnerabilities, being able to ask for what they need, being able to make requests and feel more confident around that instead of these like debilitating fears of rejection or he's not going to like me or I'm not going to be accepted if I ask for what I need or if I say how I really feel. So I would say like honesty, more honesty in relationships, more trust, more openness, more vulnerability, more comfort in how someone's really showing up in their relationship. More self-acceptance.
So I suppose what you're saying is that at the end of the process, that you're more self-aware of the characteristics that you possess and maybe the support that you need.
Yeah.
And your role is then to help a woman find exactly that where she maybe couldn't do that on her own before.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a good point. It's the awareness of why someone's doing what they're doing. Like, why do I have this pattern where I just want to accommodate my partner all the time, or where I react or like lash out or withdraw, or like these coping mechanisms? Like, why do I do that? Where's that come from? What are the fears underneath? Like, and getting this perspective on that really does help shift and make changes in relationships. Definitely. Yeah.
Now, something I enjoy doing in my line of work is reflecting on my practice, and in particular on those rewarding cases. So for me, that would be taking a child who presents to me quite unwell to the stage where they've got better and they're ready to be discharged home. I wondered if you had a particularly rewarding case that you can tell us about.
Yeah, actually, a recent client, she came to me with a real like discomfort around her partner's friendship with another woman who was a very close friend of his. And I'm sure a lot of listeners will be able to relate. I mean, I can relate to this too. So she was experiencing a lot of jealousy, a lot of like possessiveness, like to the point where it was really debilitating. And these people had been, her partner and this other woman had been friends for many, many years. And it was just a friendship that just really caused so much problems. And she had so much shame around this jealousy that there were many coping mechanisms that she would use which meant that there was a lot of distance, there was a lot of arguing, there was just a lot of conflict in the relationship. So the work that I did with her was to help her understand where this jealousy is coming from and the relationships that she's had with, siblings and parents and belief systems in place and fears in place and what she's thinking about herself. And this really like changed her perspective to the point where, and also the way she dealt with it, and a big part of my work is to dissolve the shame around these negative emotions because they're human, they're normal. So when she began to really be able to dissolve the shame and soothe herself and be able to express to her partner, like I do feel jealous and I am in a vulnerable way rather than hiding it through these coping mechanisms, then he could really understand her and have compassion, and they could work together as a team to heal this aspect. And this is why I believe relationships are so powerful, because I think we do our deepest work within relationship. And there's a reason why these things get triggered, right? These are pointing to the deepest core wounds that are unresolved. So now, after working with her for a few months, I literally only got an audio from her not that long ago, and she was just really appreciative of like how she doesn't feel jealousy within that friendship anymore, and and he proposed to her like a few days ago, this guy, and it was just such an amazing. It was actually really, really cool that just came into my head as a success story, because that's perfect timing to share that. So yeah, that felt very, very good, and to have been someone that's helped this couple on their journey through helping her have a better relationship with herself and her emotions, and therefore easier about that friendship that her partner has with this other woman.
So, as you know, many of our listeners are expecting or planning to become parents. Now, unfortunately, studies show that marital satisfaction can decrease after the birth of a baby. And I just wondered what your advice would be for parents or women to help plan for that kind of thing.
I'm a fan of the prevention rather than cure. So really developing these communication skills is, I think, like the most important thing that a couple can do. Because you're right, like my mum always says, when a baby comes, it's like throwing a hand bomb in the middle of your marriage. Like, it amplifies a lot of underlying things that are potentially not spoken about. So to mitigate against challenges, I would really recommend couples, and my partner and I, we have regular check-ins like this as well, which, will kind of, it smooths out the trajectory of our relationship, because it means that things are spoken about. It means that we can say, when this happens, this might happen. When the baby comes, this might happen. And how do we navigate that as a couple? And again, like I said, just like dissolving all the shame around the negative emotions and like what might come up and how one might feel. And you don't know how you're going to feel. In all honesty, it's such an uncertainty. So I think reframing it as much as you can with, this is a new adventure, and you will become different people, and you will see different sides to one another, and your relationship will change, and that's natural and normal, and it will transition, and it's finding the beauty in that rather than, oh yeah, but I want to like hang on to this relationship that we once were. Does that answer your question? Yeah,
I think it definitely does. And again, it comes back to having that awareness of what the unit is before, and trying to pull through some of those things after the baby arrives. Because you're still the same people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something I joke about with my husband a lot is the fact that as we're having a boy, that there'll be a new man in my life when the baby arrives.
Yeah.
And obviously that's quite a common thing where as women we then have to share our time with the baby and also our partners.
Yeah.
I just wondered, is there any advice you have on how I myself or a way I can help encourage our family to support my husband during that time?
Yeah, that's really lovely. With the support that your family could give your husband. First of all, it's extremely normal, like my partner and I are having the, when the baby comes chat as well. And he brings this up a lot. He's like, oh my God, this new person's going to be coming into our lives. I'm going to have to share myself with you. I don't know how I feel about that. And it's so common for men to feel like, to feel neglect, to feel unprioritized, and to even feel, resentful or jealous. And again, it's dissolving the shame around these emotions because they're so normal. It's so normal to feel these feelings for men. So I think that's the first thing. I think, like, as a couple, normalizing that, like really knowing that that may happen, and to create that safe space for the male partner to say, babe, I'm feeling jealous, or I'm feeling resentful, and I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. And maybe that's not necessarily to the woman, it's to someone else. But I think having an avenue or a vent, or like you say, maybe your partner could speak to your family members about how he's feeling, but just having some kind of way of expressing that is going to really, really serve the relationship. Yeah.
I think that kind of brings me on to my next question for you, which was, some men do feel that they are quite needy when the baby comes, and sometimes that can provoke a feeling of embarrassment.
Yeah.
But how can you support them with those kinds of feelings?
I mean, again, it's like really letting men know that it's okay to feel those feelings, and that I could guarantee that most men feel that and do potentially feel embarrassment to the point where they don't share that with even their friends. So I would say that to reach out for support, whether it's friends or support groups, about these feelings, to be able to express them, will really, really serve the relationship. And in terms of like how to work through that as a relationship, it is really about putting the relationship first, and knowing that is a safe space, making the relationship a safe space for these feelings to get aired, And obviously there needs to be capacity, especially for the woman who is under-resourced a lot of the time with lack of sleep and stress and caring for the baby. So there needs to be the space created there to actually have these conversations as well.
And something you've talked about a lot is encouraging the safe space and that conversation. But what if you have a partner who's maybe not someone that naturally shares and bottles things up? How can you then encourage them to be more open if that's not naturally how they are?
That's a really good question. For the one that is more open, say the woman is the more open one, the man is the less open one in this scenario. If the woman would, every now and again, just remind their partner that this is a safe space, and that, and if, for example, the woman has noticed maybe like a guardedness or a distance or something like an emotional shift, then the invitation is there for the woman to go, I've noticed this, just letting you know that I'm here if you would like to chat about anything that you're feeling. But everyone's got a different way of dealing with it. Like some men may they have stuff, they may want to just go for a run or a walk, or chat to a friend or whatever, and get something out before they're then ready to go, okay, I was feeling like this before. But I do always encourage that conversation to happen. If someone doesn't want to maybe share what they're experiencing there and then, because it's quite common to go into a bit of a dissociation with emotions, like I'm feeling this, but I don't know why. So I do encourage the inquiry as much as possible, and for there to be at least a conversation of, I did feel a little bit like this. Can we talk about it? Or I would want support. But like I said, it's different for everyone. It's not all, it depends on upbringing. It depends on so much as to why someone isn't going to share. But just creating that space of, I'm here if you need me. I'm here if you need me. And not pressuring is going to help the one that's less available for that emotion to kind of open up.
So, of course, my baby is coming in the next few months. And whilst I'm hoping this is going to be an exciting and happy time for us, we have to be realistic that there's going to be some stress involved, and naturally that's going to put a strain on the relationship. And of course, there are times when I'm going to need more support from my partner. And in particular, I'm thinking about those times when he's perhaps gone back to work after paternity leave and then comes home and I've had a difficult day with the baby.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice on how I can seek support without causing an argument?
So, just to get clear on your question, as in seeking support from your partner, as in like help with the baby?
So, I need support either with the baby or just in general. I need emotional support for myself also. But I'm finding it hard to juggle that with having to ask for help from somebody who's already gone to work and come back and wants to maybe wind down in the evening. Yeah,
true. And this is a good question. And again, first of all, like I said before, this prevention rather than cure, like this right now is the time that you and your partner can sit down and like speak about various different scenarios that could happen, and air these fears out and like make requests. And are you able to do that? Do you think that you'll be able to? Will you have capacity for that? Like you're gonna, it's invisible labor, right? This looking after a baby. But both you and your partner are going to have kind of, at the end of the day, are going to feel knackered in different ways. So it's really about supporting one another. And yes, like being really direct and asking for what you specifically need from your partner. And I do think that the arguing happens, it's more energetic. So if you go to your partner resentfully, you know, you haven't had to deal with the baby all day, you should help me, is going to be received very differently to if you have compassion and love and you're saying it through with the energy of compassion and love, babe, I really need some support here. You know, would you be able to just help me out? Would you be able to help me out? Is that something you could do? That's going to be received like really differently. And apart from the relationship support or the support that you could get from him, I definitely would recommend as much, like community, it's so important. So your friends, your family, when friends come round, like ask them to bring a dish of food or something. Like one of my best friends, she's got 3 kids, and she said that was the godsend when she was like just had this newborn baby. Her friends would come round with food, with meals, and it was just things like that are so helpful. And that's what you can ask your friends and family to do. Would you mind, you know, like cooking us a lasagna or whatever? And people love doing that as well. Like I'd love it if my friend said, oh, would you be able to cook me a dish or bake me a cake? I'd be like, absolutely. That'd be like, it's a gift that you're giving people as well. So you can definitely get a lot of support from friends and family. And again, specific, like be as specific as possible. Like if you say to your partner, you're not helping enough, what can you do with that? You know? So being really specific about what you need, and don't let it accumulate. Like say it when it's there, like when it's alive, when it's present, rather than letting it accumulate. The days go by, he's still not doing that thing, and it's like the resentment builds. It's like when it's there, when it's present, when you're feeling it, you express it.
Yeah, and I guess what you're saying is about making these things known, somewhat of a agreement beforehand, so that everything's there in the open and you're more aware of them. Is that something you ever recommend, making a kind of agreement? And would you involve maybe the community as well, as you suggested?
Yeah, and you know, we talk about this a lot in the uni episodes. There's one around how to actually create a relationship agreement, and that is going to look different to everyone. My partner and I will create it like vocally, you know, we'll sit and we'll have monthly bi-weekly like meetups where we just schedule a time and we'll just talk about something specific, or we'll check in with each other. So I really, really recommend that generally. And then, so again, you and your partner are in a position where you could create this relationship agreement. What do you expect from one another? What are you expecting from yourself? What's he expecting from himself? What are you needing to implement, so when the baby comes, you're kind of like prepared. You're like emotionally and mentally prepared. Like you are dealing with some of these underlying things. You know, you're speaking about it, you're naming them. And that's what's, very, very important before the baby comes, which, as I said, like amplifies a lot of the unsaid stuff.
And something you've talked about a lot is this preparation and mitigation of things. But of course, that doesn't always work. And there is some evidence that, you know, after the baby's born and in the first year of life, there is an increased rate of breakdown in relationships. I just wondered if there was any advice you had for couples to help, again, mitigation.
I would say that a powerful tool in the midst of intense conflict is a timeout. And again, I really learned this with my uni research. Like, this really stuck out, and me and my partner do it all the time now. For me, I think, you know, the blood can boil and I can feel myself wanting to react more so than my partner. So the timeouts are just so great. Like, my partner is very good at just go, okay, we're calling a timeout. And sometimes it's like, no, I don't want to call a timeout. I want to say something horrible to you. But actually, it's so good, because then I can like go off in my room and just, you know, hate him for a little bit. But then, you know, after a while, it's about self-regulation and like regulating and getting to a place where I can, okay, you were in a stressful moment. It's natural to want to bite each other's heads off. It's natural to like want to be opponents in those moments, you know, but we're kind of in coping mechanism. We're in the like threat mode. We're in like the you versus me mode. And that's not really the essence of the love, you know, that's not really who you are. You know, you kind of like snapped into your coping strategy, which is actually a very young part of us. So to, you know, snap you out of it, the timeouts are great. So I really, really recommend when you've, you know, again, which is hard, you know, I haven't got children yet, so I can't relate to having just the overwhelm of the stress of the baby crying, but I would say that in the more stressful the moment, the more you want to bite your partner's head off, the more you need that tool of the timeout to go, right, okay, we're going to go off for half an hour. We're going to, you know, but don't make it more than like maybe an hour or two. It's got to be like, name the time. Okay, timeout, we're coming back in half an hour, you know, or an hour. And then my partner will usually go for a walk or go for a drive, and I will just sit and in my room, or sometimes I'll scream into a pillow, you know, there's like or have a dance, you know, there's like different ways of discharging that stress in the body, that like the fight flight that's like taken hold in that moment.
And I think that's really valuable advice. Yeah. Taking a time out seems, in the heat of an argument, like such a strange thing to do, but I guess it really just dissipates that anger.
Yeah.
Of course, there is also the worry that when you want to have a dispute or a difficult conversation with your partner, that your baby's also going to be hearing that. But sometimes you do just need to have those conversations and vent. Have you got any advice for how you could maybe calmly argue when you've got the baby around?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So I'm not, and like you say, in the first 6 months is probably the time where, you want to want to suck those arguments up maybe more than normal, but I would generally say that hiding something from children is arguably worse than actually having an argument in front of your child, because it's important that they see you make amends, to have the fight, which is normal, and then making amends and coming back to love. Obviously, there's different areas on the scale of like what an unhealthy argument is versus a healthy argument. And I do think you can argue in a healthy way. Like my partner and I will, if we are really, in conflict, but we know that we're just about to go out to see friends, or we're just about to do something, we'll go, right, we need to park this. Like, so I'm more for, okay, really annoyed at you right now, or there's something that I really need to express to you right now. Let's come back to it. Let's park this. And then you wait until the baby's asleep, or you wait until your parents have the baby, and you go, right, let's revisit that conversation from this morning or from yesterday. But and that's, for me, I find that difficult because I just want to talk about it now. But it is really worth just going, okay, I'm going to park it. I'm going to let's park it, but know and have that agreement that you will come back to that, because you definitely want to come back to that, because that's where things accumulate. And it might always be one partner that has to remind the relationship to come back to it, and that's okay, as long as you do come back to it.
Let's talk about co-regulation. It's something that you discuss in one of your uni episodes with us, but also something that lots of adults, as well as parents, don't know much about or may not be familiar with. Can you give us any advice on how it might be applicable to life as new parents?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, people may wonder what co-regulation is. So to speak to that first, with regulation, what I speak to, and what there's much research out there too, there's a lot of information out there, is speaking to a nervous system regulation. So when we are in fight flight, our nervous system is dysregulated. When we are shut down, our nervous system is dysregulated. So a regulated nervous system is one that is functioning, healthy. We're a resource. We can communicate well. We are open. We are compassionate. We can listen. When we have a dysregulated nervous system, we are, we're in our coping mechanisms where we are blaming, we are criticizing, we are withdrawing, we are, othering. So this idea of co-regulation, there's self-regulation, which we, as I mentioned with the timeout earlier, the timeout is so we can both go away and self-regulate, and calm our nervous systems down so we can have a healthy conversation. Co-regulation is where a couple can regulate one another's nervous systems together. And again, in a preventative way. So co-regulation will look like eye gazing, which not all couples, have you ever looked into your partner's eyes for more than like 30 seconds? That's not something that all couples do, and it's something that I really encourage. And yes, you probably laugh and feel silly at first, but it's really something that really deeply connects you with the other person. You really allowing them to see you, and for you to really see them. So eye gazing is a really brilliant one. My partner and I do that quite often, especially when we've had really busy lives and we feel like, we need to check in and connect. So, and especially for new parents and stressed out parents, what new parent isn't stressed out? So it's really important, especially for a couple that have a stressful day-to-day life, to use these co-regulation techniques, such as, one of the Unii episodes talks about the kind of good morning, good night ritual. So the good morning one is like, how do you greet each other every day? And do you spend a little, like 10 minutes spooning in bed? before you start your day. Like that's something that co-regulates the nervous system, that touch, that hugging. And also at night, what do you do before you go to bed? Saying 3 things that you appreciate about one another. Really, these are all things that help with co-regulation, and therefore make your day-to-day business seem a lot easier and connected. And that's the important word, connected. You want to feel really connected with your partner as you're going through and navigating this process of being a new parent. And these co-regulation rituals really, really help with that.
And I guess that goes hand in hand with working as a team.
Yeah.
And I know that's another thing that you've discussed in one of your episodes about the step-by-step process of how to work as a team.
Yeah.
Can you recommend any apps or resources for couples to help them post-baby life in working as more of a team or a better team?
So I would say that is the most important. Like I said before, it is so important to turn towards each other in times of stress instead of away from one another. Again, the Unii platform has a lot of content around this, because the tendency is to other and turn away and withdraw and shut the other one out. So really it's like, okay, what does the relationship need? How can we support one another? How can we be on the same team here? This is a crazily different experience and crazy transition for both the man and the woman, or the couple having a new baby. I mean, nothing can prepare you for this significant change. So it's really, I like the analogy of, or the kind of image of 2 people like holding hands and walking through the fire together. They're like walking through this just overwhelming amount of chaoticness, but they're together, they're connected, they're navigating it together. So it's really easy in terms of stress to just do the opponent thing. So really being aware of that and keeping on, like I said, scheduling in those chats and talking about it, and calling each other out, or in, as my partner likes to say instead, calling each other in when one of you isn't like thinking about the relationship, when one of you isn't like treating the other one as a teammate and is instead treating the other one as an opponent. Like my partner's very good at doing that, because in stress I can treat him as an opponent. In stress we can really treat each other as an opponent. So really to say, right, we have to call each other in when we do that, when we other each other, because remember, we're fighting for the same thing, we're fighting for the same cause here, we're in this together. So to remind one another to keep noticing when you're doing that is good, healthy.
I think that's fantastic advice, and actually something it made me think about was actually when the baby arrives, I may feel some resentment towards my partner, because obviously we have such different roles after the baby comes.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for women to deal with that resentment?
Yeah, and good question. And again, normalizing that for everyone listening. And I don't think there's many women that don't feel that sense of resentment for the fact that it's their body that has to go through this, massive change, and they are the ones that have to give up work for that amount of time. And there's a lot of sacrifices that women need to make that men don't. I mean, that's just standard, right? Or the non-birthing partner, I should say. Acknowledging that resentment, and for the non-birthing partner to acknowledge that will happen, that sense of just frustration and annoyance at this huge, it can feel like a huge burden. So normalizing that first, and then also again communicating, creating that safe space to just air these feelings out, and having that completely reflected back, active listening, on getting your partner. There's nothing more, I don't think there's nothing more validating than hearing your partner hearing you, really hearing you. So they're listening and they're reflecting back. So I'm hearing that you feel resentful. you know, do you want to speak about that? Do you want to share any more about that? So you're feeling resentful, and they're reflecting back. Is there any more about that? Like that curiosity, you know, just saying it out loud is so helpful. It doesn't necessarily take the emotion away, but just that is the support. Just knowing that your partner hears you, gets it. Yeah, I mean, they don't know what you're experiencing. They can't ever know what you're really experiencing. So like that's something that the non-birthing partner really needs to get their head around. And also, yeah, how can you teach? Alain de Botton says this, like, how can we kindly teach our partners about us? You know, it's all about like really being kind in that teaching though. And like, how do you teach your partner about what you need and who you are and what you're feeling? But in terms of, you know, taking away that resentment, that's something that is present and needs to be accepted, because I think that is a normal part of this huge change that a woman needs to navigate. And you want to really like turn towards each other in those moments and have support and know that your partner gets it. Like really like feel that your partner gets it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know those days when my partner comes to me and says, something's up. I can tell something's up.
Yeah.
And that just feels really warming, doesn't it? That somebody's noticed and I've not told anybody else and I've kept it to myself, but you've noticed.
Yeah, I love that.
And I really hope that would continue, obviously, into our baby journey together.
Yeah.
That he'd be able to pick up on those cues despite the chaos, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, that's lovely. He sounds like he's very attuned to, your emotional shifts.
So in your uni journey, you discuss the conflict styles and you refer to John Gottman. Mm-hmm. Can we talk a bit more about those styles?
Yes. So usually in relationships, people will fall into one or more conflict styles. And John Gottman, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, he calls, I added one in the uni one because I didn't feel like the 4 of them got everything, so I added one. But using that as a framework, the 5 different conflict styles are blame, criticism, which I think there's a bit of an overlap with blame and criticism, sarcasm, withdrawal, and defensiveness. So blame, and these styles all get triggered under stress, and usually we will fall into one of them. So when we're triggered, we can blame our partners, we can criticize our partners, we can get really defensive when someone's saying something very, very, like, you know, it could be very mundane actually, like, could you take the bins out? And there's a defensiveness there. Withdrawal, which is emotionally shutting down, like a kind of dissociative quietness, maybe sulking, or silent treatment. And sarcasm, which is just kind of belittling language and putting your partner down. I don't want to say too much about them because there's lots of juicy stuff on the uni on the uni episodes. But if you go to the people listening, if you go to the conflict style episode, it will explain a lot more about the styles and what happens when you kind of adopting this style, and actually what it means as well, and why, and how to move through it, like what the solution is, what the antidote is, like what can you actually do with that to move through it.
Something I'm wondering is if those conflict styles change at all when you have a family.
I would say if you only had one conflict style, you have a family, maybe all of them would come into play, because again, it's like you add stress to any situation, and all of these coping mechanisms, because they are coping mechanisms. These conflict styles are essentially coping mechanisms. So in moments of high stress, we can kind of oscillate between all of them. I mean, I know I can relate to every conflict style. There's maybe one or two that are like more I relate to, but all of the conflict styles I can definitely relate to in terms of like intense stress.
Me too.
Yeah.
And something that I do a lot already, and I imagine I will continue to do, is turn to, parents and, my support network when I'm in those situations of conflict. Have you noticed that maybe there's any generational differences in conflict styles? And if there are, is it okay then to seek the support of maybe someone a generation or two above you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And again, it is very different for every family. And also, if culture's in the mix too, there's like a very strong emphasis on turning to your parents for support. Like, go to your parents. They are the wise support. Perhaps not so much in Western culture, but a lot of people still do use their parents as a resource. And I think if there's strong benefit in doing that, then brilliant. But there is some disparity. And I think with the younger generation, there's so much information at their fingertips, with social media and the internet, and people are really wanting to research this stuff. There's all these different terms that are around now, relational terms that you wouldn't have heard of like a few years ago. So I do think that there is a generational difference between how young couples versus older couples deal with conflict. And therefore, there is potentially a bias if you were going to ask your parents for support, and a bias because they may put your needs ahead of your partner's needs, and therefore it's not a level kind of equal kind of analysis of the situation. So I know that I could, if I go to my mum with something, she'll prioritize my needs. She will always put me first, and well, everyone else is wrong. You're right. And as much as that's a really lovely trait, and she loves me very much, it's not always healthy. It's not always helpful for like getting support with conflict. So I would say friendships, support groups, seeing what's available in your area with other mums or dads. There's dads groups, there's mums groups, there's a lot of resource available, as well as kind of your close community.
Actually, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I feel like when I go to my mum, most of the time she says, "Oh, stop being hard on them." That it's you. But,
yeah.
So it's very different.
It's so different, isn't it? Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be the other way.
Yeah.
It could be actually like, oh yeah, give them a break.
Yeah.
That's really true.
So after a child is born, we redefine ourselves as mum and dad. And I just wondered, is there a possibility that you could also redefine your sexual life?
So inevitably, your sex life changes after having a child, and probably isn't something that especially the mum is thinking of in the first few months. So again, like, knowing that your sex life will change is a good thing to keep naming and talking about before that happens. And it is natural for the man to be more ready to reignite that passion and sex life more than the woman. So, I mean, Esther Perel, who is an amazing therapist and talks a lot about kind of sex life after kids, says that foreplay happens in between the last time you had sex and the next time. So there's all this space that you can use as foreplay. And foreplay doesn't mean it has to be sexual. It's intimacy, it's connection, it's so much more than just, what we think intimacy is sexually. So in order to kind of bounce back, or not necessarily bounce back, but just transition into this new new relationship with the new sex life. So there's a really great exercise that my partner and I use actually, And I would recommend that new parent do this. And it's all about consent, So you're sat opposite your partner and you're asking, your partner is asking the other partner. So your husband would say, Saranya, how would you like me to touch you? And it could just be, just want you to stroke me on my hand. And then he will say, is that okay? Do you want me to do anything different? And you'll go, yeah, can you do it a bit harder? He'll go, okay, brilliant. And then is there anything else? So yeah, okay, now I want you. So, and it starts with just soft touch, and little exercises like this really mean that he's hearing you, you're feeling connected, he's not pressuring you, you are inviting him to touch you how you want to be touched. And then vice versa too. You will then say to your husband, how would you like to be touched? And you can also say, that's not comfortable for me. You can also say, no, that's not comfortable for me. So you're like working within your boundaries and consent, and everything is very, it's very heard. So you're really hearing each other in that space, and it's really, really powerful exercise. And my partner and I did a workshop in this summer and learned this actually, and we've been practicing it, and it's really lovely.
That sounds like a fantastic way to just ease things in and then build on them, but also to tailor those to your exact needs.
Exactly.
And they may have changed, I suppose,
exactly.
from
and
pre-birth.
Every time will be different.
Yeah.
You need something different.
And I suppose one thing I'm particularly worried about is the fact that I am definitely not going to be the same size and shape as I was, pre-pregnancy. And it does affect your confidence. And I'm sure many other expectant mothers have also experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
How can you advise partners to support mothers in that rebuilding body confidence journey, especially in the aspect of then, reigniting the passion for your sexual life?
I don't think women realize how beautiful they are to their partner. Like, no matter what, there's like a level of like love and worship and devotion there that women tend to, myself included, make skin deep, Oh, well, if I don't look good and my partner doesn't love me, or my partner doesn't want to have sex with me. And so I do think there's a lot there that is, there's belief systems there that need to be addressed. Because your partner could be saying, you're stunning, you're amazing, I just love your body. But if you're not fully believing it, you're not going to receive that. So I do think that there's some stuff that your partner can do to help that, but it is definitely a journey that a woman needs to go through. It's like this rites of passage, that it's this transition into a new level of self-love, like really embracing womanhood, embracing like going from maiden to mother. Like that is a huge transition for a woman, like a spiritual transformation. And so many learnings come through that. And some of those learnings are to like accept this new body. And some bodies do bounce back. My best friend who I was telling you about earlier has had 3 kids. And you wouldn't be able to tell at all. And that's different for everyone though. But my point is that a lot of stuff we future trip and can worry that our bodies are never going to be the same, and that my partner's not going to be attracted to me anymore, and I'm never going to like fit into those favorite jeans or whatever. And they are stories, they are stories. And then when those feelings of like, even when we've got the most perfect body, we can still wake up one day and feel insecure and like hate our thighs or hate our hair or whatever. Like it amplifies a lot of this underlying insecurity, which is there then to be addressed and looked at and worked through to like move into this new level of, self-partnership actually for women.
Yeah, so again, coming back to that self-awareness.
Yeah.
So a lot of parents worry whether their relationships are going to be the same as it was before they've had their kids. And Of course, my husband and I, anticipating that this might be a big change for us as a couple without children at the moment, we've tried to make time for each other by having a monthly date night that we stick to, so that we're really embracing our relationship before things get a bit more hectic and the dynamic changes. Have you got any advice for parents who have that fear that maybe things will never be the same again after you start to have a family?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a date night is perfect, and always make time for a date night, like once a month. My partner and I have a date night once a month, and we'll surprise one another. So I will surprise him and book something one month, and then he'll surprise me. So we don't know what it is. So it's got that element of mystery. So I really, really, really recommend that, find someone once a month to take care of your baby and commit to that. And aside from that, it's really to keep reminding yourself that every phase of this journey is going to keep changing. Like nothing will stay the same. Like my sister, my 3-year-old, she's 3 now, my niece, my sister goes, oh my God, I miss those like early days. She was like stressed out to the max in those early days, but she looks on them really fondly. And a lot of the time we can regret how we perhaps like viewed those times, and it's more like hindsight. Those newborn days were so wonderful. So it's remembering that, especially with children, like everything changes and nothing is permanent, and those sleepless nights are not gonna last, so really, again, it's like turning towards each other, like seeing the humor in it, like looking at your partner and just laughing at like the ridiculousness of how nuts it is that neither of you have slept for a week, and that you're fighting about just like spilt milk, literally, and taking those moments to just step back from the situation and go, we're in this together, we're walking through the fire together. It's nuts right now, but it will change, and it will, it will get easier and harder in other ways. So it's really just, becoming like a pro surfer of these, inevitable waves that are going to be happening in your relationship.
So if you're up for it, I'm going to be asking you a few questions, and I want you to answer them as quickly as you can.
Okay.
Are you
Sounds
ready?
Good. Yep.
Okay. So first question, tell us about a hidden talent that you have.
So I really love playing djembe drums, which are African drums.
Okay. And where did you learn that?
I learnt it when I went traveling when I was about 21, and I met this woman who played drums because I love rhythm, and she was playing this like huge drum. I didn't know what it was at first, and she was just playing it like amongst other musicians. I was like, wow, what is this? And then she taught me. I got one made, especially when I was in Australia, and then we used to busk on the streets, and ever since I've just loved it. I've now got 3 djembes. Me and my partner love djembeing together.
I was just going to say, did you bring it back with you? But I guess
no, I didn't bring that one
your
back.
djembe family has grown.
I know, it has. I actually really regret selling that one because I chose everything myself, the fur, the skin, the design. Yeah, it was amazing.
You'll have to bring it in next time.
I will.
So we
as
can
long as you
hear
dance.
it. I'll try. So on the topic of music, if you were a boxer, what would be your entrance song and why?
Can I choose 2?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So first one is Ain't Nobody by Shaka Khan.
Yep.
This is also my karaoke tune. I've got another karaoke tune that's also my feel-good tune. Is It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls.
Okay. Both good classic choices.
Classic tunes.
And if you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
I know it's really cliche, but it has to be flying. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it gets you to anywhere where you want to go faster than any other superpower. And you're flying.
Yeah.
What's more amazing than flying?
Yeah, I can't imagine what that feels like.
Exactly.
Of course. But yeah, that
Exactly.
sounds like a good choice. Okay, so we're going to do a rapid fire round now. So I'll
Okay.
give you 2 options.
Right.
And I want you to answer them as quickly as you can.
Okay.
So, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Love or friendship?
Can't choose both.
Hugs or kisses?
Again, both.
And favourite ice cream flavour?
Mint choc chip.
Good choice. And lastly, describe yourself in 3 words.
Okay, the makeup artist just helped me figure out one of those. Funky. Creative. And open.
Excellent. All sound like fantastic qualities for a relationship
What are yours?
coach. Oh, no one's asked me that yet.
I'm putting you on the spot now.
I'd say chatty.
Yeah.
Friendly.
Yeah.
And caring.
Oh, they're very nice.
But if you ask me again next week, it might be something else. Thank you, Natalie. That's really lovely. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But a wonderful experience talking to you and listening to all of your experience and your personal stories about relationships. And I know I've certainly learned a lot that I want to put into practice, not just after the baby comes, but even today. And I hope our listeners will have the same experience when they hear all of your episodes on the journey.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Saranya. It was amazing to be here. And thank you for all your juicy questions.
You're welcome.